Oh, here we are. One of these days, I'm going to get the hang of this process here. So let me see if I can pull you in, Lorenzo.
Sure. And this is
There
the
we go.
first of your hopefully many kind of art book talks, correct? Is that
Yeah.
nice? Well, I appreciate you inviting me. I was looking forward to it the first time you mentioned, and I'm glad we were able to touch base the other day and
Well,
arranged
you
for today.
inspired me with this when
Oh,
you joined me back. I guess it was back in November, was it? End of October, November. You were
I
last on
believe
the.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah.
just talked and talked. It was wonderful. It was great.
Let me just make sure this is coming in. Something went wrong. That's not good.
Okay, I've got a cup of tea here by my side, so if I turn around and sip tea,
It's okay. I should have got a cup of
yeah,
tea myself. Let's see. I don't know why I got monetization going on here. There we go. Hey, there we are. Okay.
great.
I wanted to make sure I noticed one person's waiting for us there. So yeah, this live streaming stuff is it's a challenge to learn, but it's a lot of fun. And I appreciate you
Yeah.
being a guinea pig here
Well, hey,
on this.
it's I don't mind it. It's every day. It's so fun to see learn something new. Right? We've been learning so
Yeah.
much this year, and so it's great.
Well, as I was saying earlier, you were one of the reasons I wanted to do this show today. We talked about it back when we interviewed you back in October, November there. So anyway,
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
been remiss to get it scheduled, but here it is. We're here. We're going to talk
I
about
know.
some books.
I'm so glad. Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so being a new format, I didn't know if you had an idea in mind which way you want to go. I just kind of grabbed some books that I thought I'd like to talk about and tell you why, but I don't know if there's another angle you
No,
want to go at. Um,
you've got a cup of tea there, and I've got my seltzer water.
oh, good, good.
Keep my throat clear, and we'll just talk about it. But I just want to go through a little housekeeping before we dig into it. Okay, so
Sure,
yeah,
sure.
so the first thing is, there's a chat here, and I already see some folks dropping in. We've got Inky Shaman. I'm probably mispronouncing people's names because that's what I'm very good at. Tony Clark from Vermont. It's good to see
Nice,
Tony here. Yeah.
nice,
Okay. Jeff Eichhoff. Hey, Jeff. It's really nice to have you here. Jeff, you can
nice,
you can let me know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly too. Okay. Give me a thumbs up. S.C.
nice.
Williams. They say they look forward to this conversation. They're from
Great,
sunny
great.
Vancouver. Is that not?
Oh,
Is
wow.
it sunny in Vancouver?
Probably. Well, probably this time of year.
It could
It
be.
seems like we
Yeah.
get sun during the winter time.
Yeah. It's gray
I
here in
think.
Georgia, so it's very
Okay,
gray.
yeah, kind of like that today here in Denver too. So
Yeah. So I got a couple of thumbs up there. All right. Very nice. Hey,
nice, nice.
one other thing too. Just drop in your comments, your questions, and we'll try to get to them throughout our discussion here. So I've got Lorenzo Chavez here from Colorado. He was in episode number 47, I think, of the Artful Painter. But boy,
That was fun.
that was a 2 hour and 20-minute conversation, and here we are. We're
Right.
back at it.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's sure enjoyable. You're a great interviewer, you're fun to talk to, and always interesting to share information back and forth. So I appreciate you inviting me to do this.
Well, it's my pleasure. By the way, we have Lisa from Melbourne, Australia.
Oh wow, hi.
That
Wow, that's a long
is that
ways.
is so cool. Yeah, I've never been to
That's
Australia. I'd
fantastic.
like to go. Have you been
Yeah,
there?
likewise. I have not, but
Yeah,
I've some of the books here are Australian painters. I absolutely love the works they do. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And let's see. Did I have? I think that's pretty much everything right now. So, hey, John
Okay.
Patushnik is on. Hey,
Oh,
John.
hey John. Hi John.
Wow. I should just let him come on and I just drop
Right.
off.
Oh, well, definitely. We could use 4 screens. That'd be fun.
He has an outstanding blog. I love reading his blog and his interviews with artists. It's,
Yes, inspiring for sure.
yeah,
John's
definitely.
incredible, and so that's fantastic. He's on it. And you've interviewed him.
Yes, John was on.
Yes.
Forgot. Let me see if I can find the episode here real quick. Um, John was. Oh man, was that? Has it been that long ago? No way. It seems like it was just yesterday that I talked to him.
He was one of the earlier ones, wasn't he?
Yeah, let me see. Well, I shouldn't be wasting time trying, but I want to give credit where credit is due.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I can't find it right off the bat there, but anyway, well, I'm glad to have him here. And by the way, in a few minutes we're going to bring in another guest who was also on the podcast. So he's a lover of books, and I can't wait to introduce him. Lorenzo and I had a nice conversation with him prior to this live stream beginning. So anyway, we welcome everyone. It's good
Yeah.
to be here. Art Book Talk. We're going to talk about art books.
Yeah.
I got carried away because I like all kinds of books. And
Right, right.
last night I was getting way out of hand. I said, "Oh, I got to rein this in. I got to rein this in." So I sent Lorenzo an email, said, "Nah, just art books. That's it."
Right, right. But I was so curious to see what it was you had to say. So perhaps that could lead to some more conversations, because I think it just grows from the art books. You know, there's so much creative people
Yeah,
do to stay creative and to learn and to engage in the creative life. You know, and so it's so multifaceted.
oh, definitely,
So
definitely.
it's always fun to peruse what other creatives do.
Exactly. And to me, it's hard to do like a top five or, here are the top
Right,
five books. I just can't. I've tried to do that and I can't do it because there will be
right,
something here and something there that I find interesting and inspiring.
exactly. I know well, when you mentioned top five, I immediately thought about the books that I felt were, that just stood out. I kind of
Hmm.
imagined, well, if I wanted to take book knowledge with me, and even kind of stepping back to when I started and I was in a deserted island, what books would they be? you know, and of course, it started with just a handful of books when I first started. Now I've got hundreds. What you see behind me is just a tiny, tiny percentage of what I have. But I'm an avid book collector, and I find it to be a wonderful, inspiring resource. But and I still continue to collect books when my wife allows me now. So
Yeah. Well, I tease my kids. I said, if I die, make sure my wife, your mother, checks the price on these on eBay because I don't want her to be
right.
shortchanged.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So Tony Clark was very helpful. This is really nice to have people in the background really helping here. Said that John Potoshnik was on episode 40 back in August. I
Oh,
knew it
wow.
was, yeah,
Wow.
episode 40. Yeah, okay.
Nice.
And let's see, Wendy Calmiris is Calmiris is on, and I
I
want to give
didn't.
her a shout out real quick because she emailed me earlier and said, could she, broadcast or share the link to this to her audience?
Oh,
And I said, yeah,
nice.
definitely go for it.
Oh,
Unfortunately,
that
I'd
was
sent the
nice.
wrong time,
Oh, okay.
but
You had me doing some math too. I was like, is
yeah,
this?
how does he do? You'd have to
but
have a time machine to do it the way I did it.
but it worked out. It worked out.
Yeah.
We got our ducks in a row, so that's
That's,
good.
yeah, well, you were real nice. You didn't even question me. You just said, okay, I don't. So let's get back to books, man. So Lorenzo, what are some of the things that you look for that identifies a book that really makes an impression on you?
Oh gosh, that's a really great question to start off with. I wish I had thought about that one. That's as we said it earlier when we were talking just before the camera went on with Kyle about, we're always learning. And that's one thing with this filled, and possibly all creatives, there's a never ending learning curve. And so, I look at my resource of books as a way to just constantly gain new insight, gain new inspiration, learn possible lessons from other artists who are painting now and who've painted in the past. And so I look for things that will kind of strike a chord with what maybe a direction I want to go next, or something I'm trying to understand better. And I'll start to look around for resources, and books have been timeless in that search. They've been a part of my ongoing search since I was, even in high school, early years of high school. I would go to local public library. I didn't have a lot of resources to go out and buy books. I think the very first art book I ever purchased was a paperback book of James Bauma's works.
Oh, wow.
And there was a bookstore at one of the local malls in Albuquerque where I grew up, and it just resonated. I loved his works, so I thought might have been one of the very first art books, so that I actually spent money on. But most of my exposure to books was at the library, and I found it to be endlessly inspiring. I could go to the art book section, sit there, and just pull book after book, and it started to kind of create a deep passion and desire that it hasn't gone away.
Wow. Well, that reminds me of our guest. So I'm going to bring in our guest here, because he was the same way. And I encourage everyone to go listen to his episode on the Artful Painter, because he tells his amazing story about his high school library. So let me see if I can get him in here.
Okay, great.
Let's see. There we go. Kyle Buckland.
Hey.
Hey, Kyle.
Hey, guys. Awesome.
Yeah, it's good to have you here, Kyle. It was a very last-minute thing. Yeah. But
honored to be here. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were also inspired by books in your high school library.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was like I had not a whole lot of means, like, so when I was younger, for purchasing a lot of art books, but I was always going to libraries and seeking out art books. And in my high school, the high school was built in the 1950s, and they had a list of books that I guess they got this kind of generic list of books to buy for the art department of their library. And one of those books was Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting. And so it was there on the shelf, and I took it out, and it was like 10th grade, and I read it, and I was like, I don't understand anything this guy's saying right now, because it was just so over my head. But I knew there was something there. I said I should read this book again. So I read it again in 11th grade, and I got about 30 or 20% of it, and then it started to click with me, some of the things he was saying, and I just had never seen anybody paint the landscape, and trees in particular, the way that he painted. Such poetry in the way that he painted trees, and the way that he wrote about painting. And it just led me on this quest to I found Emil Gruppi through Carlson, because I started looking, well, who studied under Carlson, because I knew he was a teacher. So that kind of led me down this path of art instruction books, Gruppi and these other artists, Charles Mavalli, who edited the Gruppi books, and just really kicked off a quest.
See, this is amazing to me, though. So Lorenzo, I don't know how old you were, and I'm not going to embarrass you, put you on the spot, but I will embarrass myself. I was about 50 years old when I first heard of John Carlson, and that's when I got my copy. So here, Kyle, in high school.
That's pretty fortunate, Kyle. Right. I was a little older than that. I was probably in my late 20s when I first discovered Carlson or found out about his book. But yeah, what a classic, right? It's thinking back about our high school library, I know there were books, but a lot of them probably were more based on kind of the well-known painters, the Impressionists or Rubens or Michelangelo. And so that's kind of what I was exposed to more than the not so much the American painters, but sort of just the very well-known painters. And so, you kind of go through that whole thing. learn about them, which is always, I mean, just fabulous. But then eventually, I think out of high school is when I started to find more of the regional American painters. And that led a whole, to an endless search into all sorts of schools of art.
Yeah,
But
I had a similar
yeah,
experience with French Impressionism because my father had a lot of books around the house on Impressionism and French Impressionism and British Impressionism. So I kind of fell in love with those painters first. But then when I found the Carlson book, I was like, wow, these guys are painting, up in the Catskills, up in New York, and it was more relatable, I guess, subject matter because it's American art, and that was just just interesting to see how Impressionism translated over into America and that little period after Impressionism when these painters were still going out and painting landscapes.
Very nice.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I tell you what, we probably should talk about our first. So we brought in the Carlson book,
right.
which is good. But so Lorenzo, I want to hand it over to you. What is one of your recommendations? You feel like it would be a good book for us to read and be inspired by?
Well, I kind of have, I actually set aside some books up here on the side table. One is Carlson's book. It's in there. I was going to pull it out. That kind of came later, but the very first book that resonated with me, I was just out of high school, my first year out of high school, and it was a high school friend of mine had gone to. I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, so a friend of mine had gone up to Santa Fe and went to a gallery called the Fenn Gallery, and he saw a show of the work of a gentleman by the name of Ned Jacob. And so he pulled this book out. He purchased the book at the show and was showing me this fabulous book. So I would say here it is, the Sacred Paint.
Sacred Paint.
Let's see if I've got this right. There we go. Sacred Paint, Ned Jacob, 1970. Let's see, I wrote the date down. 1979 is when it was published, and it was published after he had a major show at the Santa Fe Gallery. And if you don't mind me reading a couple things, it wasn't so
Sure.
much, beautiful works. Here's a gentleman who grew up in Maine, who moved west as a young man, probably in his late teens, moved to Montana and lived with the Blackfeet Indian, and got to know his first painter in Montana, an artist by the name of Ace Powell, who kind of took him on his wing and let him go sketch the Native Americans, and he would, he started to kind of start to sketch, and he started to develop this love of art. And so this book is a lot about how he started. He's a, I don't know, are you familiar with his works, guys? Ned Jacob?
I've not, no.
A fabulous draftsman. He's just a fabulous draftsman. But so a lot of this book talks about his process as a young man and how he developed his desire to be an artist. And so if you don't mind me reading a couple things, I had marked a couple passages here. I'm going to have to get my glasses on because everything's fuzzy for me.
I got mine.
This is one of his words of wisdom in this book. He said, the most difficult thing about being an art student is that you want to paint wonderful pictures, but you haven't got the mental equipment or confidence to do it. So you think you just don't have the ability. You look at an older painter's work and think of superior talent rather than superior experience. You think it's impossible to paint like that, but it's not. It's just not possible in a year or two. I just love that. That's sort of one, that's these few lines that he talked about in this book sort of set in stone that this is sort of a lifelong learning journey, Eventually I got to meet Ned. I moved from Albuquerque to Denver in the late 70s to come to art school in Denver. And Ned had moved to Denver to kind of work with a group of artists in our area. And so eventually I got to meet with him and paint with him. And, do figure drawing at his studio. And he was a big advocate of drawing. One of the things he always talked about whenever I ran across problems with painting, I'd say, "Oh, I'm really struggling with this." And he would always say, "Well, how's the drawing?" It always was drawing was the answer. And
You
that was
went back to the basics, yeah.
Right. It was always about drawing. It's like draw. And,
so this book here is, so it's both a biography and like a collection of works.
Mostly a biography about his life, up to, this book was published when he was 40. So it was mostly about how he developed as a painter. And he talks about his, he worked with Robert Lockheed, and how Robert Lockheed taught him to go out and paint plein air. And he worked with Bettina Steinke, and Bettina taught him how to use charcoal. And so his words of wisdom of what he developed are all kind of scattered through this book, as well as his painting images of what he, was creating. Let me see if I can pull up a quick little sketch here. He was just a master at the quick sketch.
Oh, wow.
There's a native figure. I know it's probably.
Well, this book is just going. This book is just going to go up in price on the used book market now.
It's a fabulous book. I know. I don't know if it's available at all now, but let me read another word of wisdom. Bettina Steinke is the artist I mentioned, and she had encouraged Ned to use charcoal. Ned's probably in his early 20s, and he's in Taos, New Mexico, and learning how to be a painter. And so she showed him how to work with charcoal. And here's what he said. He took her into her studio. He dug out several kinds of paper and charcoal. And in an hour, she gave him a concise lesson in charcoal. But he says, but Jacob worked for months before he began to achieve the results he wanted. So again, it was sort of this, he kind of always is implying this, you're going to have to work at it. It's a process. And so very, very inspiring to read this book. But this is, I would say, would be one of the first books that really hit a chord.
Very nice. You studied with him as well, right?
I did. I was fortunate to take a workshop at the newly formed Art Students League here in Denver. Mm-hmm. I had known his works prior to that because of this book, and so in my eye, he was just this. I just idolized him, and it just finally meet him in person. It was quite amazing, amazing thing.
Well, Jeff,
one of the funny things is I remember I was at a restaurant with my then girlfriend, and I was probably in my early 20s, and I recognized Ned at this restaurant. It's like, that's Ned Jacob.
Had you met him before?
Hi. I had never met him. So I went over to his table and I said, "Are you Ned Jacob?" "Yes." And I of course, like, I'm studying to be an artist. I want to be an artist. And his advice was like, "Get out of it now." Don't do it.
Run.
Right, run the other way. But of course, I didn't follow that advice. But that was
to paraphrase Willie Nelson, "Oh, mama, don't let your babies grow up to be painters." Huh?
Right. Yeah, he tried to wean me from it, but it didn't work. It just inspired more. And that's just the kind of person he was. He's very inspiring. So I hope others who read the book find it inspiring as well.
Sounds good.
So
I've got it on my wish list.
Yeah, that was number one. I don't know if you want to. Want me to pause or?
Hold that thought right there, because I want to get to our chat here. So Jeff says, "I'd love to hear their favorite books by category, like painting theory, Carlson, Schmid, or by artist works collections for inspiration." Jeff, I apologize. I didn't even think about categorizing things. It was kind of a stream of consciousness thing, but that's probably a good idea. but we'll keep that in mind in future shows. I don't know how that's going to work out today, but good one, Jeff. appreciate you bringing logic and order to my chaotic mind. Let's see here. I got another one here. This is Tony. Used copies of Ned Jacobs' book are available starting at around $30. But the new book is $700. If it's in new condition, I'm assuming that's new condition. On Amazon is $768. No.
Nice. Snap them up. Snap them up.
Yeah, this is a issue though. I think some books are way. This is just a little side footnote, but sometimes these things the pricing is calculated by bots, and it's just some of the prices are ridiculous. Like, how did they come up with $768? That doesn't make sense. A human wouldn't do that.
Right.
Or maybe they do. I don't know. But where you get $768. But I found that one of the best ways to do this is just set up alerts and on eBay, Amazon. Well, I don't know if you can set up alerts on Amazon, but I know on eBay you can. Google alerts, you can do this and just scan for them. And every once in a while you'll find a good deal. You just have to be patient with it. So this one is on my list. This is one I want to get.
Nice.
Assuming our audience doesn't buy them up first.
Right. Yeah, you might might go online right now and buy if you. I don't know.
Well, that happened with. I recommended a book. I don't want. It was Dan McCall's book, and that price just went. I noticed. It just kept going up and up and up in price. And I had one person even emailed me and said they even paid the money for it. They wanted it so bad. It was like, I think he paid $175 or something like that. So, wow. Yeah, I've not paid $175 for a book.
Yeah.
No.
They can be pretty pricey. Have you, Kyle? Have you paid that much for a book?
I think no. I probably paid 130 for a book or 120 for a book. I just recently bought the original Elementary Principles of Landscape Painting, which is Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting before it was edited. And I think I paid a little over $100 for that.
Good for you. Yeah. How are the plates in that book? How are the?
They're similar. The black, there's still the black and white, but it's got about 20% more literature in it than the original or than the edited version. So it's kind of neat to go back and reread some of the, to read some of the stuff in context with the stuff that was edited out. And but it's an older book, so I guess that's what you're paying for is a rare find. And it took me forever to find it. I had to look for like 7 or 8 months till it finally popped up. So
nice,
I was happy to find
good
it.
find. It sounds like. What year was that? What year was that published?
I think the early 40s, or it's not it's not like with the first edition, but it's either late 30s or early 40s when it was published.
Nice.
So it was before the Sterling editions. Yeah,
I love those early books. That's for sure.
Yeah, I actually have it right here. It's
oh, you do? Good. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that dust. So nice.
Yeah, and
I'm going to let me solo Kyle there.
So.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, and just it's and it's a lot of words, a lot of reading, but he had a lot of good stuff to say, and so and then this is the 1950s edition that I actually got from my library, and you can see I had to add my own custom spine to it.
I love it.
Spine there.
Well used. Nice.
So I actually worked out a deal with my high school library where I bought them the updated 1970s version, and they gave me I was able to get the 1950s version, so it's kind of means a lot to me to have it. So yeah.
Right.
That's amazing. That's quite a story there. Well, I'm glad you showed us that Elementary Principles there book. I've got it on my wish list. I've had alerts set on it for 6-7 months now, but I've not had any hits below $700 or so.
Oh,
yeah, it's hard to find the especially the earlier versions. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go to book number 2, Lorenzo. You got it. You
So
whetted our appetite with Sacred Paint.
Well, this one is very well known, very well loved, but I had an interesting story about this book. Uh, I had moved up to Denver after, in the late 70s to come up to attend art school. But, I'd had all my good friends from high school back in Albuquerque were still around. And I had a friend of mine who was attending the University of New Mexico, knew I was interested in art and found this book, had no idea anything about the book. And he just bought it for me and mailed it to me and said, I saw this book. It was in their kind of used book sale at the university. And I received it. I had never heard of the book either. And boy, it was a life changer. Can you see
I can't see the title very well.
Richard Schmidt Paints the Landscape.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I do have that one.
Yeah, this is missing the dust jacket, but so talk about good fortune and good luck. I got the book. I think I set it aside because I don't know who this person is, but boy, I sure found out and have perused this book and fell in love with it. And I'll talk about why. It's a classic. Schmidt Paints the Landscape, which led to, the other book, Schmidt Paints the Figure. Became totally enamored with, what's that?
That one came out well before the Alla Prima volume that most people talk about today.
Yeah, this was published in 1975. It's a first edition of the 1975
He was only halfway through his career at that point.
Yeah, and just amazing information. It's definitely a how-to book. That would be the category I'd put it in. But his, obviously classic American painter and landscape. It was funny when my friend sent it to me. I was based on Jacob and some of the other painters. I was more interested in the figure work at that time. I really saw my career going in terms of being more in a character portrait painter.
And I guess that was your influence with Raymond Kelly and
right.
Time, yeah.
And so this kind of sat in my shelf. I didn't really look at it much. It was like, okay, that's kind of nice. That's nice. And I put it in the shelf and kind of eventually started to open it up and then study it like crazy. But what this book offers is, his tools of the trade for someone interested in plein air work, which is when about the time I started pulling it out, because in the mid to late 80s, I became interested in plein air painting. So I pulled this book out and wanted to study what he used. And he really talks about the tools of the trade, composing the landscape. He talks about values out in nature, the way to mix pigment in the winter. I was really drawn to his winter scenes a lot because he was.
Hold on just a second. Let me get you centered up there.
Okay.
So everybody can see that good. Oh yeah. Yeah.
That really struck a chord. At the time I was living in Denver and we've got a lot more snow up here. So really his winter scenes really resonated.
Well, Kyle's good at that too.
Kyle's very good at that. So I could see you probably have this. I'm sure you have this book, if not several copies.
I've read it. I don't own it, but I've read it. I've definitely, that was one that I took out. I got interlibrary loans from when I was younger, and I was just absorbing all this material, and that was definitely on the list of books that I read over quite a bit. So.
Oh, nice. Do you have his more recent books, Kyle? The Alla Prima and
the Alla Prima. Yeah, I have Alla Prima.
Yeah.
Nice. I need to get that one on landscape painting since I'm mainly a landscape painter.
Yeah. It's just loaded with mostly black and white images in the book, but his layout of what he's doing, kind of the way he blocks in paintings, was really well done. What can I say? A classic American painter.
It is good. I have it. I found it for about, I think I paid about $20 for it. It's considerably less expensive than Alla Prima. maybe not as comprehensive, but it's a very good volume. And I think you can still find it fairly affordably, 20, 30 to 60, 70, depending
good.
on condition. But it's a great volume. That's a good
Yeah,
recommendation.
the books
There's
have gone
something to
down.
be said. Sorry, there's something to be said for the old black and white reproductions in those old books too, because it really shows design and composition and values, which as an early artist, that's what's really important. We all get fascinated with color and we want to learn, how to make the beautiful colors, but that's really where it's at. And when I was younger, my dad had some old editions of the Royal Academy, like the 1901 and 1902, the exhibit catalogs for the Royal Academy, and they were all black and white. But I loved looking through those because the design, just would jump out at you because it was all old black and white.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. In fact, that reminds me of Ned Jacob used to always say, study works in black and white. Study at the time, it was like the old exhibition catalogs or old books which offered most of the imagery in black and white. And I think Carlson's book is mostly black and white images. I don't know if there's any color.
Pretty much all.
Well,
there's a couple, I think, watercolors, but
if you get the Sterling edition, I think it's Sterling. There's 2 plates in there that are color, and then they let me get myself in here, so because I'm gesturing and no one can see it. Yeah, so there's 2 color plates plus the cover, and it's interesting because 2 different editions will have 2 different covers, 2 different paintings on there. Yeah, it's really interesting, but it's not. It's a great volume, but that's a good find that you got. It was great that somebody sent that to you. Richard Schmid paints the landscape, right?
Richard Schmid paints the landscape. So here was, one of the things at the time too that I started to really look at this book. I started taking classes with a painter named Mark Daly, who had studied at the American Academy of Art, and he was a few years after Richard Schmid, but definitely a fan of Richard Schmid. A lot of artists that had studied up in Chicago were. And so one of the things Richard Schmid talks about in this book are those classic color charts. And of course, Mark Daly was having us do the color charts. I brought along the color chart I did when I was in his class. Here's a page from the color charts. This was created, I think, in 1986 is when I was doing these color charts, based in his class.
So those are your color. Those are the ones that you made,
right? Yeah, these are ones I made, but under the tutelage of Mark Daly at the Art Students League. And Mark had studied at the Academy, and that was sort of a thing. They had all the American Academy of Art students. I found out were taught this system using Rubin's palette. And doing the color charts to understand color mixing in oil. So Mark Daly had us do that during the Art Students League, but it had a profound effect. There was a couple of things that happened with this landscape book and the color charts. After spending, weeks creating these color charts, I laid them out on my studio floor and I was looking at them, and I had just picked up a color chart of pastels. This is a Semelier color chart.
Okay, yeah.
That's a pastel color chart. And it hit me. I thought, boy, wouldn't it be amazing if I could have a palette that had all the colors already pre-mixed to go take outdoors? Wouldn't that be amazing? I mean, how expensive would that be? And how
pastel
crazy
or
would
oil?
that be? Right. And that led to the question, like, pastel. And this color chart, instead of making me dive into oil painting, it completely turned the tables on me, and I abandoned oil for 25 years and worked in nothing but pastels.
Wow.
Because you could take a palette like this in pastel outdoors in the field, and you had all the colors. They would never dry. And you're ready to work with them at any moment.
Jeff Eichhoff says, that's awesome, Lorenzo, in reference to your color charts there that you've made. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was one other thing here that kind of hit at the same time I was thinking about that in this landscape book of Schmidt. He wrote this. Richard Schmidt mentions all these painters that inspired him, and he mentions this Italian painter by the name of Giuseppe Cascara, 1863 to 1945. Richard Schmidt says this: Cascara was a master landscape painter using pastel, one of the most difficult of mediums. And boy, that lit a fire. I was so jazzed and excited. I said, "Give me that! Bring it on!
Challenge on!"
I want that! Yeah. So I jumped in it. Those few words there were worth the book for sure.
Neat.
That's like, okay, let's go for this. And so I hope you don't mind me sharing that. But that's all.
That's great.
That's what books will do.
Now,
yeah, books will light a fire.
Well, so you still teach. Do you have your students do that type of exercise, doing the color chart? I know that was the big thing in Alla Prima. Richard Schmid's doing the color charts and things like that. Is that something that you have your students work on as well, or suggest that they work on?
I definitely suggest it. I bring it in every time I teach a class, and I show them the charts, and they want to take pictures and of the charts, and I give them the system for doing it, and definitely advise them to pursue it and do it. It's something that you could call it homework. It's something I don't know if I'd want to actually teach a class on doing it, because it's a tedious, long process. But boy, it's highly informative.
Well, we've had. I don't know if he's still here or not, but John Potoshnik, he's written the book on doing color. He's got a great book on color.
Nice.
What is it? Limited Palette, Unlimited Color. I think that's the name of the book. I'm sorry, John. I'm probably messing up your book title.
Nice. Maybe he could write it in the comments. But yeah. Color is such a major thing. But so one of the other things, this was in the kind of mid to late 80s is when this book came out. When he mentioned that artist, one of the things I was fanatical. It's like, you want to follow that trend. Like, who is this artist he's talking about? And I could not I couldn't just Google it. So I had written it down, and wherever I'd go, I'd ask for, do you have any book on this particular painter? It took me 20 years to finally find a book on Giuseppe Cascara. It was when I took a paint trip to Florence, Italy, and found this book there. So that kind of led to, and you could go online now and kind of see his work in an instant, but I wanted to point this out because part of it was the hunt, the idea you'd find out about this book, and then there was this desire to want to hunt it down. And it meant visiting museums museum bookstores or library books areas or bookstores. Any city I'd visit, I'd hound the used bookstore, try to find these books that were, and it was exciting. It was part of the hunt, and I find it now. It's really easy. So it's
that reminds me of Kyle. When you were talking about that earlier, when he followed the succession, the predecessors and the successors of John Carlson there.
Yeah. It led me to the groupie books. We had groupie on painting and groupie on color and brushwork for the oil painter, which, those three books right there really changed my way of seeing. But it is fun. I was going to ask you, Lorenzo, have you been to Baldwin's Book Barn in Pennsylvania?
No, I would love to go.
Oh yeah, if you get a chance, Baldwin's Book Barn. It's an old, I think it's like an 18th century barn, and it is just full from floor to ceiling, books stacked, piled high, and old books, rare books, art books. I actually had this is one of those ones that was like a big hunt. I had heard about it, but I hadn't seen it anywhere, and I found it in Baldwin's Book Barn. And this is Renoir, an intimate record by Villard.
Nice.
So this is from the early 1900s, and when I found it on the shelf, 1934. So there's the Yeah, and it just has that classic old book feel
Wow.
to it. And it's basically, you know, a very long conversation between Ambrose Villard and Renoir, and it's, you know, direct from the source. You know, he was sitting there interviewing Renoir and writing down all the notes for this book. But that was that same kind of thing. It's like when I found it, you know, I heard like the trumpets, you know, like, "Ah."
Right. Oh man, I
I
have
said,
not
"Oh
heard
man,
of
like
that book, Kyle. Now I've got to hunt that down. I'm gonna
yeah."
you'll have to post the name of that book again on the comments or something. I've got to hunt that
Yeah,
down.
we'll put it on there. It's called An Intimate Record. Renoir, An Intimate Record. There we go.
Oh, I love
You
it.
see
I
it
love
there.
it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
And you're going to have to send me that other book there. And what I'll do is after this is over, I'll post links to each of these books if they're available somewhere on the internet.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My,
mhm.
it's yeah.
The Kaskari book.
Yeah. Just here's the name of the book, and this one was produced, I believe, in. Gosh, I didn't look at the date.
How do you pronounce this name again?
Gosh, I'm gonna mess it up for sure.
Well, good.
Giuseppe Cascara.
Cascara. Okay.
But he's you could see when you look at his works, and I know that's fuzzy, but you could see where Schmidt might have been inspired by his approach. But here's a guy who worked solely with pastel and did kind of almost the same kind of textual technique that Schmidt was pulling off. It's really exciting work. And Cascara was, you know, here he's hanging out with Antonio Mancini and Vincenzo Jimento. And, you know, when you see those names, it's like, I got to find books on those artists. That's the way it goes.
Yep. It's a never-ending cycle, right?
Isn't it? Right.
Well, I like Inky's comment here. He says, "My early influences marked me for life. Still remember the images. The power of art is that vast that changed my life."
Nice.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yep. Yeah, that books can be such a inspiring resource. And what's beautiful, my wife and I watched this documentary the other night. It's called Out of Print. And it is talking about the idea, the concept of how books, you know, with the internet and, you know, things are sort of going in a direction where books are not as valued anymore, which I don't believe. But it really, the thing that really struck me was that the book, you know, since Gutenberg invented the press, this has been this concept, this approach, this layout of the book has not changed in over 500 years.
That's
you know,
true.
it's still, I mean, how many inventions kind of stay the same? It's timeless, you know?
Yeah. Well, there's something magical about opening an art book and, you know, feeling the pages and being able to bring it up close to your face and to really examine the pictures. And I knew I had to get back to my art books when I was actually reading an art book, and I went to zoom in on the picture like you would on a phone screen. And I was like, I've been reading too many things on my Kindle. I need to get back to these art books. You have to actually hold it close to your face. But I love it. I mean, I wouldn't, you know, it's like, it's comparing apples to oranges, the digital books. There's just something missing, you know, when you're reading on a Kindle and then you pick up a nice big art book. It's just, it's like you said, it hasn't changed in 500 years. And, you know, if it's not broken, don't fix it kind of thing.
Well,
right.
The thing I like about a physical book is, you know, where you are. You have a sense of place. And, and of course, the older books, I mean, I have books that I've bought when I was a child in my library. And so, they bring back vivid memories of where I got the book, why I got the book, how it made me feel, kind of like Inky's comment earlier. You know, I remember these things very vividly. And I know they say people don't read as much, and maybe that's true. Maybe it's always been that way, to tell you the truth. Reading is not always an easy thing for folks, but reading has been a prominent part of my life as a child. You know, I had a hard time talking. I didn't talk until I was like 4 years old. It's amazing. I'm doing a podcast. But I could read, And so I learned to read at a very young age, and it's been a part of me for a long time. But there's just something about the analog book that is just so satisfying to me.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. On Kindle, do they still have this thing where when you turn the page, it sounds like the paper kind of, do they still have that?
Yeah, and it actually flips
They do?
over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're trying. They're trying to
They're
mimic
trying,
the
right,
experience, right?
Right.
But I'll still get a Kindle book. There's just, if I'm reading, a fiction or if it's a technology thing where it's going to be limited, I'll buy Kindle. I don't have an objection to that, and I use my iPad heavily to read and to research on. But there's still something about that book that I really, really like. It's so satisfying.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sometimes for rare books too, if they're real hard to find in print, you could get them on Kindle and at least absorb the knowledge and get the information out of them. So.
Yeah.
Right.
A good example is that you can still find a PDF copy of Andrew Loomis's The Eye of the Painter. That book is nearly impossible to find, and it's not affordable. It's better than some. But you can get a PDF. You can get a PDF of that particular book.
That's good to know. He did an amazing collection of books.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I didn't mean to hijack the show. So you got one more? You got one more, Lorenzo?
I have a few more. I think that was only number 2. I hope you don't mind me sharing.
Oh, it seemed like it was 5 or 6 there because it was kind of a succession.
Well, it seemed like, because it's got a trail. You find one and it leads to others. So the next book that came up, this is, after this desire was instilled to want to become a plein air painter, or was it called plein air then? It was just go outside and paint. At the time, there was a lot of a resurgence of California Impressionist works kind of coming around. And I ran across this copy. It was Edgar Payne. It was printed by the Goldfield Galleries in 1987. And what I loved about this book was it's loaded with mostly his field sketches. We see a lot of his finished works, but this show, they had I guess they gathered a collection of his field works, and so it's just filled with his field studies, which really kind of show here's some black and white images.
Oh yeah.
But they really show his sort of sketchy approach.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, here's the other. I don't know which way I'm going. Let's see, left or right.
Perfect. There's a little glare on the other one. Yeah.
This piece here, this is a scene that Edgar Payne painted in a town called Thoreau, New Mexico, which is just east of Gallup. And after seeing this image, I had to make a trip just out to this spot to see if I could find it. Never quite find the exact spot, but I found a lot of great scenery in that area. But this book really led to my desire to know more about Edgar Payne, which of course led to his classic.
Oh my goodness! Yes.
You can see. This is an older
You've
copy.
got an older version of it. So
yeah, this one is from. Oh gosh, what year was this one from? 1946.
So read out the title because it's not very clear to everyone.
It's called "The Composition of Outdoor Painting" by Edgar Payne.
Yeah.
And I've got some of the newer editions, but these older editions, really the crispness of these thumbnails is much better. I don't know, just the quality. You probably saw that in your Carlson book, but there's just a quality to them that I think the newer books might have been reprinted from these, but
I think they're more like a reproduction.
Yeah, and there's more of them, as you mentioned. There's a little more content in the thumbnails. But you might be able to find these online still. But these little thumbnails are just invaluable. I know these are in the newer editions, but so that
I have a newer edition. It's
You do,
excellent
Kyle?
book for anybody excellent book for anybody wanting to learn landscape painting or composition. I mean, just design. It's
Oh,
all about design.
it
Well,
sure is.
one of the things I've been doing with that book, I did do with the book, is I guess it was about 3 months ago. I took one of my craft paper sketchbooks, and I just went through all those drawings just
Oh,
to
nice.
go through the exercise of just because I love using like a fountain pen or something like that. So I had a fountain pen, and I sketched every one of those diagrams that he'd had in
Oh,
there. It was a good exercise. I learned a
what a
lot
terrific
just by
exercise.
doing that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
good for you.
Yeah,
That's a great practice. Um,
yeah,
yeah, it's
his section in there on the design stems. There's a
yeah.
whole little section in that book on design stems, and it just changed the way I looked at nature when I read that, and to be able to look for those things, and then like he says, you want to be able to see them, but then you want to be able to hide them in your paintings too, because you don't want them too obvious, So it's like
Exactly.
you got to learn it and then learn to forget it a little bit.
Yeah, that sort of, but
Yeah.
it sort of kind of gets in our system, right? The idea of the still
Right.
yard or the circular idea or the pyramid kind of gets into our kind of second nature, and then it comes out in our
Hmm.
works. Nice.
Imprinted into our subconscious. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I agree with you, Kyle. That's probably one of the most profound thing is his chapter on compositional stems is
Hmm.
really uh, enlightening and informative.
Hmm.
One thing that it led to, it was funny. I used to go out. There was an artist in Denver, and I would always get together and visit. And uh, I'd walk into a studio, and he'd have a new art book laying sort of right on a table, so he knew I'd see it, and I gotta have that. What is this? But one of the things that my instructor Mark Daly told me to do was to start to pull images out of magazines. Back then, there was a lot of great magazines, the American Art Review, a number of books or magazines that had images by, especially the California Impressionists. Um, and Mark Daly saying, well, just pull those pages out and set them aside. And so one thing I saw my artist friend do is he was pulling them out, cutting them out, and gluing them into a sketchbook. So here's a book anyone can make. It's a free book. It just costs probably $3,000 based on magazine purchases. but you take I took these. I spray mounted the I don't know if you can see. I spray mounted the painting onto the sketchbook, and it's just let me see if I can get out.
Get it, move it over. Yeah, there you go. There you go. All right.
Oh
So you
yeah,
made a
it's a
swipe
great
file.
idea.
Right. And what it really did, why I really promote this idea of doing this is that, especially on Edgar Payne, is you could really start to see where he was using these designs he was teaching,
Hmm.
and after doing, I mean, this is just loaded with image after image of, it's just a self-made book, but it really gave one a chance to kind of study
So,
his works.
so it's an
Um,
addition of one then.
it's an addition of one, but what it is it's a resource that's right there. Anyone can make it,
That's a good
and
idea.
yeah, thanks to Mark Daly for suggesting that because
Oh,
and this sketchbook is just I'll flip through it, but it's I don't know if can't
it's
see where I'm at, but it's just there's probably 4 to 6 images on each.
and you filled that whole thing up like that from just cutting out
Yeah,
magazines and
right. Just kind of spray mounting them on.
wow.
But by doing this,
It's
you really get into kind of the thought process of Edgar Payne. That was what was amazing. You really start to
Hmm.
see, I see what, he repeated those design concepts again and again and again. And I think by doing this, it really solidified that he was, what he wrote about, he was doing.
That's
Um,
brilliant. I'm
So that-
inspired.
there's a
I'm
free-
inspired. Hey, but I want
There's
to
a
get
free book for you.
Yeah, but you don't have it for sale. Hey,
No,
let me
it's
jump
like
into the
Pinterest.
let me jump into the comments. Just that's beautiful. That's
Okay.
beautiful. So Jeff said, Kyle, you hide a lot of zigzags, huh?
Oh,
In my
Nice.
composition, I
In
guess.
your
Yeah, the
composition, yeah.
zigzag. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to take the eye for a nice walk through the painting. I like to, to give your eye time to stroll this way and then get bounced back over here. And it's like building little bridges from one section of the painting to the next. And if your eye gets into one place, you want it to be able to go, over to another place. But then you also have to think about speed. How fast do you want it to have a couple stops along the
Yeah.
way? You don't want to shoot the viewer's eye right off the side of the canvas. So if it goes over to the side of the canvas, you have to give the viewer something to grab a hold of over there that will gently kind of bring them back in and let them take that stroll around the design. So I think the zigzag, the S-shaped design stem, I guess if we're talking about the design stems, has been one of my favorite. And then also, I think another thing that happens when you start to learn about those design stems is, and I think Edgar Payne talks about this, is you start to see how artists, Edgar Payne included, would not only use the S curve, but he would have the S curve, but then there'd be a secondary like triangle. And then there'd be the circle kind of surrounding those two things. So he was able to incorporate maybe 2 or 3 or sometimes even more design stems into one picture. And that's when it really started to get, it starts to get complex, and just you start to get into those, the infinite variations in shape and form where the eye can really go and get into the painting. And that allows different pathways for the eyes to travel. So you might look at it and you might go in that S shape, but then you might go, oh, there's also a big kind of a circular shape that my eye can go around too. So it grabs the viewer and kind of sucks them in and lets them, weave their way through the painting.
That's what it takes the
Interesting.
craft to art, right? It's the artist's thought there. Let's see, Jeff also, let's see here. Let me get the right. There we go. He says, I love that book by Payne. Super helpful in adapting my old design training to landscape concepts. I got Edgar Payne's The Scenic Journey in December, and the plates are gorgeous. I agree. That's a beautiful, I have that volume as well.
It's a nice book.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, thanks for
great
that,
book,
Jeff.
Jeff.
Yeah. Okay.
That's one of those books that has those high quality images where you can almost feel there's like a little bit of a texture to the image because it's printed with so much ink.
Yeah,
Do you know what I'm talking about? Like some of those really killer plates. There's, I think the Pennsylvania Impressionists, there's a book by the New Hope School, and it's like that too. The plates almost set off the paper just a little tiny bit because there's so much ink on them where they print it.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. It's when it's well printed, what it adds to the experience. Yeah.
Well, and printing books has gotten much easier and less costly. I mean, books are still expensive, but the technology has come so far. There's no reason not to produce a high quality art book today. You should be able to get the reproductions pretty close. I've got old books, like I got some of the old Harold McCracken books on Tennyson and Remington and Catlin and all those guys, but the quality of the reproductions are not very good in those books. But they're great books. I mean, I wouldn't give them away,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
Harold McCracken had the gift of hyperbole. So I don't know how much is true or not.
It's interesting how the quality of the images actually changed the way some of those illustrators would paint, because you look at artists like N.C. Wyeth and Howard Pyle and that whole school, they were taught to take into consideration that their images were going to be lower quality. So they had to really exaggerate value and really exaggerate design and color. And so they had these paintings that when you see them in real life, the impact will knock you across the room because they had to paint them that way because they lost a little bit of color. They lost a little bit of value in the reproduction, like the old Scribner and Sons classics with, N.C. Wyeth. It actually caused those painters to focus more on making sure that they had a lot of impact in their design. So it's kind of interesting how that played a role in the actual technique that the artists were employing.
So true. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Well, guys,
that makes perfect sense. Just kind of sharpen things up a little more than the way it'll be perceived once it's printed.
Well, it's interesting to
Interesting.
see how I forgot what I was going to say. The woodcut prints and things like that that they did at that time in the 1800s in particular they were gorgeous. They were just absolutely gorgeous. But we're coming up on an hour, so you know what that means. We're going to have to kind of wrap things up here.
Oh,
so we'll have to say, I know, but this was so much fun. You want to do it again? You want to do this again?
Yeah,
that would be a blast. Of course.
All right, good. Yeah. So let's do it again. I'll set it up. Maybe some in the next week or two. We'll do another session of this. And but just wanted to share John Potoshnik's comment. Really enjoyed this guy. Lorenzo, you're an excellent artist. Appreciated your participation, Kyle. Loved it. Thanks for this, Carl. So
awesome.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, John.
Pleasure to meet you, Kyle.
Oh yeah, pleasure to meet you too.
Yeah. Keep up your beautiful works, and just always wonderful to see what you're posting on Facebook. And
thank you.
It's opened up a world of, I guess it's another form of an art book, right? All these wonderful artists to now follow on Facebook, which has been fun.
It is fun, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
And Kyle goes out there with those great big old 48-inch canvases. I'm thinking, whoa!
Right.
I figure I better do it while I still can. I better get out there and get this big one done.
I'm just struggling to carry a 6x8 out there.
Well, you look at Edward Redfield. I mean, Edward Redfield, he was taking 50 by 56 canvases out, up into his 70s, and I mean, he was out there hauling those big canvases on his back through a foot of snow. So hopefully I'll be able to do it for a long time.
Yeah, that is. What is? May I ask? What's the largest you've done outdoors, Kyle?
48 by 60.
Wow.
With the Gloucester style easel and a big giant paint box made by Shamrock Plein Air that I actually helped design. That's specific for that Gloucester style easel, so I can paint really large outside.
I wondered. Nice. I wondered if that was the easel you were using. I saw that photo of you, and that easel that's got some history to it too. It goes back
does.
a few years.
Yeah. Awesome easel for painting outside, especially large, because it's so the span of distance on the feet makes it very sturdy and stable. So they were painting out there in Gloucester with the wind and everything, so they had to have something to keep those canvases from flying away.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to study up on that. I've not ever heard of it, so
the Take It easel is the one I use. There's a couple different versions. Take It easel, I think it's made in Vermont. Really well built easel, and just awesome.
Well, very nice. Well, gentlemen, this has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed having you. So, Lorenzo, your website? What?
Oh, it's LorenzoChavez.com.
Very nice. And I'll put a link in the description after this is over. And you, Kyle, where can people find out about you?
KyleBuckland.com and The Artful Souls on YouTube.
I like his name there. You see, Artful Painter, Artful Souls.
Yeah.
We're kindred spirits now.
Yep.
All right. Well, it's been a blast having all of you on today. I appreciate our chat room, the questions and comments. It was very encouraging. And so we'll catch you in the next edition of The Artful Painter. We'll see you, gentlemen.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.